economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, the Algerian delegation participating in the UN Human Rights Council meeting in Geneva has affirmed that Algeria is currently undergoing political and economic reforms supported by the principles provided for in the 2020 Constitution. The Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary-General for Libya, Stephanie Khouri, has said that Libyans agreed to reach a political agreement so that credible national elections can be organized. On World Refugee Day this year, more people were forced to flee their homes in Palestine, Sudan, and the occupied Sahrawi refugee or Sahrawi occupied territories due to conflicts and continuous blatant violations of human rights. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Zamani. The Algerian delegation participating in the proceedings of the 56th session of the UN Human Rights Council held in Geneva, Switzerland, has affirmed that Algeria is currently undergoing political and economic reforms supported by the principles provided for in the 2020 Constitution with the aim of strengthening the supremacy of the law, the independence of justice, the fight against corruption, the modernization of public administration, and the activation of the role of civil society. The details in this report by Mohamed Khatil.
The Algerian delegation underlined in a press release during the interactive dialogue under the second point of the agenda on the annual report of the High Commissioner for Human Rights that as part of its commitment, Algeria will organize a presidential election on September 7, 2024, thus reaffirming its attachment to the constitutional process and democratic values for the strengthening of national cohesion and progress. Underlining Algeria's constant commitment to strengthening and protecting human rights as part of universality and the correlation of all these inseparable rights, the Algerian delegation expressed the opening of Algeria to constructive dialogue with the Office of the High Commissioner and the mechanisms of the Human Rights Council, adding that last year, Algeria received special rapporteurs from the Human Rights Council who paid working visits to our country. At the international level, Algeria remains extremely concerned by the continuing violations of human rights in occupied Palestine and Western Sahara and condemns the war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide perpetrated by the Zionist occupation forces against the Palestinian people. In this regard, Algeria calls for immediate intervention to put an end to these crimes and deal with their consequences, particularly with regard to guaranteeing prosecutions against the Zionist occupation. Algeria also calls on the High Commissioner to note and document systematic human rights violations in Western Sahara by dispatching a fact-finding mission to the region to submit a report to the Council on these violations.
Meanwhile, the permanent representative of Algeria to the UN Office and international organizations in Geneva, Rachid Bledhen, called on the UN and other relevant organizations to ensure an unhindered access to UN competent bodies, underlining that Algeria will continue to provide full support to the Palestinian people and their inalienable right to self-determination.
Algeria urges the international community, the United Nations first and foremost, to take concrete action to ensure the immediate and full implementation of the UN Security Council resolutions and to comply fully with the provisional orders of the ICG, including unimpeded access to Gaza to UN competent bodies. By concrete action, we mean to cease the sale, transfer, and diversion of arms, munition, and other military equipment to the occupying power in accordance with the HRC Resolution 55/30. Having gone through a similar experience, Algeria will continue to support the struggle of the Palestinian people and defend their inalienable right for self-determination.
That was the permanent representative of Algeria to the UN Office and international organizations in Geneva, Rachid Bledhen. The president of the National Economic, Social and Environmental Council, Rabia Kharfi, has highlighted in Malta during the annual Euro Mediterranean Summit of Economic and Social Councils and similar institutions Algeria's efforts in the integration of the youth, affirming that Algeria considers its youth as a full partner in the process of socio-economic development and decision-making process. Mohamed Khatil has more details.
During her participation in the first session of the summit, at the head of a delegation from the Council devoted to the involvement of the youth in participatory processes in the labor world, Ms. Kharfi highlighted the favorable climate in Algeria, characterized by the establishment of integrated policies aimed at promoting entrepreneurship, including the creation of the Ministry of Knowledge Economy, Startups and Micro-Enterprises in 2020, as well as the development of a new legal framework for the liberal profession with a view to allowing young people to exercise economic activities in the fields of knowledge economy, innovation, and digitalization. She also underlined the creation of the National Agency for Self-Entrepreneurs, the creation of the National Fund to support startups, as well as a network of incubators for young project holders in universities and throughout the national territory. The participants in the summit welcomed Algeria's efforts, which are described as a model to follow in terms of inspiring good practices.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. This is the English service. The Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General for Libya, Stephanie Khouri, has said that Libyans agreed to reach a political agreement so that credible national elections can be organized. In a statement, Khouri said the following.
I began consultations to hear the concerns and priorities of the Libyan people, including their views on an inclusive, Libyan-led and Libyan-owned political process. To date, I've held meetings in the east and west of Libya. I met with political leaders and officials, academics, civil society organizations, women's groups, and military leaders. I also engaged representatives of cultural components, business people, as well as members of the diplomatic community. Overwhelmingly, citizens conveyed the need for a political agreement so that credible national elections can be held to restore legitimacy to all institutions. I discussed the need for an inclusive Libyan-led process to overcome the political impasse and support the Libyan people in achieving their aspirations for peace, stability, prosperity, and democracy.
The UN representative further highlighted that Libyans also share their ideas on what a future political process should look like, including the role of Libyan institutional actors and the need for dialogue. The Israeli occupation forces have committed 4 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip over the last 24 hours, resulting in the documented killing of at least 35 Palestinians and the injury of 130 others. Mohamed Khatil has more details.
Medical sources also said that 1 Palestinian civilian was killed and several others sustained various injuries following an Israeli airstrike targeting a group of people in Deir el-Balah, located in the central Gaza Strip. Local health authorities confirmed that the Palestinian death toll from the Israeli onslaught perpetrated since October 7 has risen to 37,431 martyrs and 85,653 wounded, the majority of whom are women and children. In addition to many casualties and dead bodies trapped under the rubble or scattered on roads across the war-torn enclave, which ambulances and rescue teams are still unable to reach. Meanwhile, Israeli occupation forces have arrested at least 20 Palestinians since yesterday evening from various governorates in the West Bank, including children and former detainees, according to the Palestinian Prisoners Club. The club said these arrests raised the total number of Palestinians detained by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank since October 7 of last year to over 9,300. This figure includes individuals taken from their homes, arrested at military checkpoints, forced to surrender under pressure, or held hostages. This came as groups of Israeli settlers under the protection of Israeli police broke into the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in occupied Al-Quds. Eyewitnesses reported that dozens of colonists or settlers entered the holy site in groups, conducted provocative tours throughout the compound, and performed Talmudic rituals. During the incursion, Israeli police imposed restrictions on the entry of Palestinian worshippers to the mosque. Additionally, Israeli police intensified the restrictions at the gates of the old city, literally turning the area into a military zone.
World Refugee Day is celebrated every year on the 20th of June. This year's World Refugee Day comes amid exceptional circumstances marked by the ongoing barbaric aggression perpetrated by the Zionist occupier against the defenseless Palestinian people in the occupied territories, notably in Gaza, pushing large segments of the population to flee their homes and take refuge in UN and other organizations run shelters and hospitals that weren't spared by the Israeli war machine. This year's edition is also marked by the continuous blatant violations of human rights and the exactions committed by the Moroccan regime in the occupied Sahrawi territories and the plundering of Sahrawi natural resources. Wars and conflicts are the main causes of people's displacement in the world. In conflict-torn Sudan, 9 million people have been displaced since war broke 1 year ago, making Sudan one of the world's biggest displacement crises. Nearly 2 million people have fled beyond the country's borders. At the end of 2023, around 117 million people worldwide were displaced due to conflict, persecution, and other significant threats to their well-being, including 6 million in the Palestinian-occupied territories, according to the latest report from the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, UNHCR. This document, released in June, tracks people already recognized as refugees, those still seeking to have their asylum applications approved abroad, and those displaced in their home countries. Next, a program to celebrate World Refugee Day. Let's listen to this interview with Ahmed Bayram, Regional Media and Communications Advisor, Middle East and North Africa at the Norwegian Refugee Council.